Welcome to Lesson 9, Energy Balance. We're going to start with statistics. This is a map from the CDC back from 1985, and it outlines our obesity prevalence data. The white is no data available, and light blue is less than 10%. You can notice that most are in the darker blue, little medium blue, 10 to 14%. So I'm just going to go through these charts through the years and notice that when you start noticing tan, that'll be increased obesity prevalence. We start getting to orange, it's 20 to 29%. We start seeing red, that means the state has over 30% of the people in the state have obesity. So as we work through 1990, you notice more blue. Now we have more darker blue, that's 15 to 19%. By 2000, we start getting into the 20 to 24% prevalence. And now you can see by 2005, areas of orange and even red. And look at 2010, we already have greater than 30% prevalence for most of the southern states. Now I'm going to jump to 2020. The CDC changed all their maps, but it's pretty much the same. When we have the darker red, it's going to be a greater prevalence. But notice we no longer have any state under 20%, meaning 20% of the population has obesity. So all the states are over 20%. And notice that Colorado, Massachusetts, DC, and Hawaii are the only ones that actually have 20 to 25% obesity prevalence. All the other states are over that. And same thing, you can see the increasing prevalence within the southern states. Okay, so why is this important? And we're going to get into this later, but obesity is associated with a number of chronic diseases. So dyslipidemia, that's high LDL, high triglycerides, low HDL, hypertension, diabetes, stroke, heart disease, gallbladder disease, arthritis, sleep apnea, respiratory disorders, and end-stage renal disease. There are actually many more, but these are some of the more common ones. So that's why this topic is really important. So let's look at the percent of just Americans that are overweight and obese, and this is the most recent data from the CDC. If I start with the number of that are just obese, and don't worry, we'll define these obese, overweight, extreme obesity in the next section. But 30% obese, 9% is actually extremely obese, 32% are overweight, with 25% being a healthy weight. And this represents about 1% that are 1 or 2% that are underweight. So I'm going to combine obese and extreme obesity because those two are usually thought of together, but you can see how that statistic has now gone up. So about 42% of Americans are obese, and that is just obesity and extreme obesity. Again, we'll define these in the next section. 32% are just overweight, so that means they're overweight but not quite obese yet, with about 25% again a healthy weight. And again, let's combine these just again. So now almost 75%, almost 3/4 of Americans are either overweight or obese. So that's a lot of people in our country who are now at greater risk of many of those chronic diseases that I had listed already. So it's not just an issue in the United States. This is actually what people are calling a pandemic. I mean, we're living in a pandemic now, but this is a global pandemic of obesity. If you look at this map, and you don't have to know any of these numbers, but the darker blues means there's a greater prevalence. And you can see the darker blues all throughout North and South America, sections of Europe, definitely Australia. The lighter blue is lower incidence of obesity. So you can see that's mostly throughout Central Africa, areas of India and Asia. What's important here is to note is a lot of the developed countries have a greater prevalence of obesity. However, I mean, look at these segments. Even Northern Africa is starting to get higher rates of obesity. I'm going to bring up Mexico just because they're our neighbor to the south, because it's really striking statistics when you look at back in the 70s, infections, respiratory illnesses, deaths from parasites. This was the cause of disease in Mexico. Now, what's amazing is that they have substantially increased their nutrition, their healthcare, and given their population the ability to treat these diseases. What's really upsetting is now they're dying from heart disease and diabetes. So these are the top 2 causes of death today. And so it tells 2 stories. 1, some advances in healthcare, but 2, also the introduction of essentially the standard American diet. And now we have heart disease and diabetes. So I think what I'm going to end with here is just this quote. I wish I knew who said this, but I think it's a great quote. We have not had a global collapse of willpower in the last 30 or 40 years. Okay, so just think about that for a minute. It's because most people think, well, it's just willpower. I just need to do better. Or they just need to do better. Or they just need to be, eat less or exercise more. Or I just need to eat less and exercise more. And that's just all about willpower. Well, if you think about it, do you think really in the past few decades, like all of a sudden worldwide, we all just suddenly no longer have the desire to exercise and we just want to eat too much, or we have no more willpower? I mean, just think about that. It's not willpower that is contributing to obesity. Okay, there are certainly some aspects of personal responsibility, but what we're really going to get into is all the other causes of obesity. But we'll talk about that in the next section.